Hi everyone, Richard here at Calvin Wazoo, bringing you another video, and today I want to share some finds that I purchased on my vacation last week. I was in Maine. First time I have ever been to the state of Maine. It was a really wonderful time, very beautiful country, the ocean and rocks, just a really amazing trip. And there were some good record stores in Portland that I visited. One that came really highly recommended was Moose Records or something like that. It's a big store and they had lots of touristy types of items, and then they had a section for vinyl, but it was all very much brand new vinyl. It was pretty much dominated by brand new vinyl and not a big variety. Did find some other really good stores, however. There was one called Abraxas, and the other store, which was right around the corner from it, I can't quite remember the name, and then there was another one. So there were a total of 4 record stores that I visited, but I only spent money in 3 of them. So anyway, get started here. This one, Xray Specs, okay, Germ-Free Adolescence. This is a reissue on clear vinyl. Like just about every other clear vinyl I own, you know, there's one little fleck, so it's not a perfectly clear album. I only have, of the 3 or 4 clear albums, clear vinyl I have, only one of them is, you know, perfectly clear. But anyway, Xray Specs is a punk band that I had heard about in a soundtrack. I believe it was for Sid and Nancy. I think they were in that soundtrack. And I just remember hearing them and making a note to myself, I need to investigate this band. However, it was many decades before I got, you know, this. And this is their only album. Interesting reading, you know, all the background on this. The lead singer, her name is Polystyrene, and it was kind of interesting. You know, she kind of began singing reggae, but you know, nothing spectacular or anything like that. And then she got hooked up into the punk scene, like so many others at the time. You know, she saw the Sex Pistols, and, you know, boom, that, you know, that's what she wanted to do, like many others in the band. It wasn't an all-girl band. There were just 2 girls in it. Interesting, the other girl in the group, she plays the saxophone. And again, it's just really cool, as I put that over there, you know, saxophone in a punk band, it really works. So let's see, it says Rudy Thompson on sax here, but there was actually someone else, Mary something. I was looking it up and now I can't remember, but she was the sax player in the beginning, and then she was kind of like pushed out. Jack Airport, the guitar player, really good guitar riffs on this. But after they made this first album, they were doing some touring. You know, they kind of started to fray at the seams, and they pushed Polystyrene out. Great dispute over whether she was she left on her own or she was actually forced out of the band. But then they never recorded anything else, and Jack Airport actually left to start the band with some other people, Classics Nouveau, which is a just typical 80s 80s pop band. 80s sound, 80s pop sentimentality, not punk at all. So it was like a very, very big transition, you know, for him. But this album is really good. It is a classic punk piece, you know, in the discography of that area. So Xray Specs, definitely something to get. And in the punks, again, I found this one in God We Trust, the Dead Kennedys. So picked that up mostly because, you know, it's got the song, let me get the name right, Nazi Punks, Fuck Off. Very good, nice, you know, the graphics, and then of course it's the label for this. So I just need to get Frankenchrist, and I've not found one in good condition. I've seen copies of Frankenchrist out there, but they're just terrible copies. Finally found a nice copy of this Kiln House, Fleetwood Mac. So this is the first studio album after Peter Green left. And it was the last studio album that Jeremy Spencer was on before he left to join a Christian cult. We also have Danny Kerwin really coming into his own as a songwriter and guitar player. He is definitely carrying on the tradition that was sort of set up by Peter Green, and he does a fantastic job. And he and Danny, he and Jeremy seem to work pretty well on this. So there are some really good jams on this. Station Man and High O Silver, July Judy was probably pretty close to actually being a significant hit for them. So I marked this album probably as my favorite post Peter Green Fleetwood Mac. Bare Trees is good, but you got some of the songs that are definitely showing the route that they were going to go next, and that would have been also, I believe, Danny Kerwin's last record with Fleetwood Mac. And then I found this, Savoy Brown, looking in, really nice shape. The cover is in excellent shape. This is one that was on the Parrot label. Nice gatefold. Kind of interesting. I suppose, you know, the photos, the compositions of the photos for the band members are representing a bit about their interests. I mean, you've got the drummer Roger Earl here, you know, with fly fishing gear. So maybe he's a fly fishing enthusiast. Bass player Tone Stevens, you know, by this car, looks like a Rolls. You know, so maybe he was, you know, into cars. And then you look at Lonesome Dave or Dave Peverett, vocals and guitar, and you know what's his interest? It looks like he's, I don't know, is he a collector or something like that? Seems to be a bit all over the place. And then Kim Simmons, the lead guitarist, you know, it's all he's got is records, you know, and he's sitting on top of a record crate. Pretty good. So in the front of the cover, the back, I got a little bit of ring wear down here, but all in all, this was a very good find. Appreciate that. That same store, this was a very small store that was on a little side street. And then I picked up this copy of Hot Tuna, which I already have a copy of this, but this one is in much better condition than the one I have. This is the one recorded live at the New Orleans house in Berkeley. Really solid psychedelic blues, because, you know, we're talking about Jonma Kokkonen on acoustic guitar, Jack Cassidy on bass. They were both with Jefferson Airplane. And then Will Scarlett on harmonica. So a lot of good songs, very classic, classic tunes. Now, these next two that I picked up were basically inspired by Rob, down there in Spain, when he's talking about, world music and recordings, ethnic recordings from different areas around the world. So he's got a series. I'll start with this one. He's got a series that's about the Okora label. So I went into this store, and this guy in his 70s is running it, and he has lots of good material in there. In fact, that's where I got the Kiln House copy, was in that store. And I asked him about the Okora label, and so we had something from Okora. Now, this is one that Rob hasn't talked about yet, but this is the popular music of China. And I could see the Okora label. And I really, really liked this. The seller had some other recordings, like from Smithsonian or from Gary Lomax. I think that's the guy's name, who did a lot of those recordings of blues and Southern traditional music. And there was one for, like, it was a 3-record series, the music of Tibet, and then there was a 3-record series for the music of Japan. And he played for me what about the Tibetan music, and it's just, no, that was just a little too esoteric for me and just not very listenable. I could tell that this is not something I'm going to be playing much at all. And I am a practicing Buddhist, but the Tibetan vehicle is not necessarily, my wheelhouse. So I kind of passed on those. Then I did take a chance. He played this other one for me. This is another series that it's the Music of Africa series. And there was this one on Uganda. And listening to this is on the Kaleidoscope label, which it's got a sticker on it because this was the property of the Bucknell University Department of Music, which makes me wonder, is this, how did it get to be in a secondhand music shop? Was it a legit, purging of records from the music department, or did somebody swipe it and then this is a hot record? But anyway, talks about it, explains the different instruments that they're playing on, and then there are these two tribes that live across the river from each other who had conflicts with each other right around in the area of Lake Victoria and the river, the Nile coming out of it. But it explains, the music that you're listening to, the instruments and how they are constructed. While listening to it, I was reading one of the descriptions, and it talked about how the music was, praising the master and things like that. And I was thinking, like, oh, I don't, what's going on here? So I started reading from the beginning, and some of these musicians, many of these musicians, were part of a royal court. And at this time in Uganda, it was a monarchy. So yes, the master was the king, and that's, what they were singing about. And in fact, this recording, while it was released in 1972, the playing was actually recorded in the 1950s. So this is very much a window into the traditional folk music of Uganda that, is very difficult to find. And when I was listening to it, I immediately thought of the Swedish psychedelic band Goat. And I can hear how Goat was influenced by this style of African music. If you've ever listened to Goat, and what you are hearing, is a very similar, except they're, of course, more electronic and they're a bigger band. But this music is really, really quite special. I'm really glad I got that. Been looking for this one for a long time, and so they had a copy here, Dr. Johns Gumbo. So this is this is on the Alligator label. And, there are a lot of songs that are, really interesting covers by other bands. For example, on Gree, you've got Walk on Gilded Splinters, and then Humble Pie does a really good cover of that song, completely different style. And a song that's on here is Junko Partner. And The Clash and Sandinista do a cover of this that's very much in the style of reggae dub. And I just, find that really interesting how, other bands have taken some of Dr. John's songs, and when they've done a cover, they've really, stretched it and did their own thing with it, and it's really, really cool. But yeah, this is very, very good album. I'm finally glad I found it. So that's going in my Dr. John collection. Now, this one has been on my list. This is Metallica and Justice for All. I'm not a really big metal fan, all right? But I got this mostly because, I'm kind of interested in Metallica. I do not dislike them. And I was interested because of the one song on here called One. And I talked about this in an earlier video because that song is based upon the story written by Dalton Trumbo, Johnny Got His Gun, which is about a soldier from World War II who wakes up in a hospital room, and he gradually comes to realize that he has no arms, he has no legs. He has no mouth, so he can't speak. He is deaf and he is blinded. So, but his mind is perfectly intact. He can think, and the story describes how he struggles to communicate with, the doctors. Initially he tries to tell the difference between day and night, so he can get an orientation of passage of time, etc. So anyway, the fact that they did a song called One based on that book, which was pointed out to me by a student at a private school where I used to work. So it was always something of interest to me. And what I kind of find interesting also about the rest of the songs on here is the way that the songs are introduced in many ways acoustically, or without the real heavy metal fuzz and noise. So the melody is being, played, and I'm forgetting, all their names. And I know it's on one of these, not Kirk, is it Kirk Hammett? Yeah, it is Kirk Hammett. And then they go in and then they'll play the, the very heavy metal style. That I found really, really kind of interesting, how they did that with a lot of the songs on this album. However, it's not something I can see myself playing all the way through very often. and I might play a side on occasion. So, although, you know, I'm still interested in getting a couple more Metallica albums because I certainly have a great appreciation for what they are doing musically. They're not just there making a lot of noise. These songs have got significant sonic structures to them, and many of them also have fairly complex time signature changes going on. So they're complex songs. This isn't a 2-chord heavy metal jam. Okay, they're very skilled. And then the last album, one to add to my Eric Dolphy collection. So Far Cry with Booker Little, and and this is on the new jazz label. And what I found really interesting, this is a good album if you want to investigate Eric Dolphy. This is a good one to start with because many of the songs on here are very melodic. They have somewhat traditional structures to them, and yet Dolphy still gets wild crazy with his, his outside style of playing and his avant-garde style. So, I mean, you listen to some of the other ones, like maybe Out to Lunch or the Iron Man album, where, you know, Dolphy and the songs they're going a little further out there, and the connection to a central melody is tenuous at best and sometimes non-existent. This one does or presents songs where that melodic core is stronger. So it may be easier for people to listen to Eric Dolphy, and you're going to hear the beauty of the jazz that he plays, and, you know, with a structured song that you're following, and then still experience his crazy diversions when he's playing the solos on particularly the bass clarinet. And he plays flute on here as well. Some really nice pieces with on the flute. He also does the alto sax. And it's got Booker Little on trumpet, Jakey Byard on piano, Ron Carter on bass, and Roy Haynes on drums. So those are my finds from my trip to Maine. Hey, subscribe to my channel if you haven't. Leave a comment in the down under if you have any comments about any of these albums, or if you have suggestions for other albums for me to look at based on what you saw here, or maybe you agree or disagree with some of my comments about some of the albums, particularly Metallica, hey, share your share your comments with me. I read everything. So I hope you are enjoying your day. And as always, remember to enjoy your music.